When we think of Nero, one of the most infamous Roman emperors, the image of a ruthless tyrant who played the lyre while Rome burned often comes to mind. But was he truly the monstrous figure history has painted, or was he a victim of political propaganda? It's hard to imagine that someone with aspirations to be an artist could commit such heinous acts. Yet, history has shown us that artistic talent doesn't shield anyone from becoming a ruthless dictator. One such example is Nero, the Roman emperor who at the age of 16, despite his love for poetry, music, and even sports, became one of the cruelest figures in history. Nero ruled for just 13 years, yet in that brief time, he committed unimaginable atrocities to maintain absolute control regardless of the bloodshed required. But how did Nero, a man whose father was not emperor and who wasn't the obvious heir, ascend to power? What acts of cruelty did he commit to make the Roman people fear and despise him so deeply? In this video, we dive into Nero's rise to power and what made him the cruelest emperor in Roman history. Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, better known as Nero, was born on December 15, 37 AD, to Gnaeus Domitius Ahenobarbus and Agrippina the Younger. After losing his father at the age of 3, Nero was raised by his father's sister and received an education befitting Roman elites. Agrippina, Nero's ambitious mother, was the sister of Emperor Caligula and, after being exiled by him, returned to Rome when her uncle Claudius became emperor. She then married Claudius multiple times, and after his death, manipulated him to make Nero his successor, despite having a biological son, Britannicus, who was the natural heir. To secure Nero's position, Agrippina poisoned Claudius, clearing the path for her son. Before Agrippina's manipulation, Emperor Claudius was married to Valeria Messalina, a woman whose name has become synonymous with scandal and betrayal. Messalina was notorious for her extravagant and immoral behavior, which created a storm of controversy within the Roman Senate and among the people. Despite her infamy, Messalina wielded considerable influence over Claudius, using her position to secure power and eliminate rivals. Her ambitions, however, eventually led to her downfall. Messalina's numerous affairs and political machinations culminated in a scandalous plot to overthrow Claudius, a plot that was ultimately discovered. When Claudius learned of her betrayal, he ordered her execution, an act that left him without a wife and vulnerable to further manipulation. This gap in his personal life and political stability set the stage for Agrippina to step in, marry Claudius, and position Nero as the next emperor. The marriage between Claudius and Messalina had far-reaching political implications. It demonstrated how personal relationships could be exploited for power in ancient Rome, and how such unions could make or break an emperor's reign. Claudius's marriage to Messalina, followed by his union with Agrippina, underscores the volatile nature of Roman imperial politics and the lengths to which individuals would go to secure their ambitions. But this doesn't end here. You won't believe what he did. Here comes the most interesting and brutal. Stick to the end. The murder of his stepbrother. Britannicus, Claudius's biological son, was a constant reminder to Nero of his own illegitimacy. After Claudius adopted Nero, Britannicus was often belittled and humiliated. Agrippina's manipulation eventually led to a bitter rivalry between the stepbrothers. Nero, in his desperation to eliminate threats to his rule, poisoned Britannicus, just days after humiliating him in a public performance. Tacitus, an ancient historian, recounts how Britannicus died from poisoning, which Nero claimed was due to epilepsy. The poison, likely hemlock, caused fatal convulsions and the death of his rival. The murder of his mother, Agrippina. Nero's reign began under the shadow of his controlling mother, who continued to manipulate him. The friction between them grew until it turned to hatred. Nero, who had always dreamed of being an artist rather than a ruler, saw his mother's influence as a barrier to his ambitions. After multiple failed attempts to kill her through poisoning and even a collapsing ceiling, Nero succeeded with the help of trusted guards. He had her stabbed in the abdomen, claiming she had plotted against him. Nero's marriages were just as brutal. He first married Claudia Octavia, his stepsister, who, though loyal and loving, was considered a nuisance by Nero. He ultimately divorced and exiled her to marry Poppaea Sabina, whom he deeply loved. When Poppaea died during pregnancy, Nero reacted violently, reportedly kicking her in the abdomen, which led to her death. In response, he later arranged a lavish funeral, though he never truly recovered from the loss. His obsession with Poppaea extended so far that after her death, he found a young male slave who resembled her, and took the extreme step of castrating him so that he could marry him. The slave, named Sporus, was treated as Nero's wife and paraded in public. And Nero publicly treated him as a replacement for his lost love. This bizarre relationship highlights Nero's troubled psyche and his inability to cope with his own guilt and loss. The Great Fire of Rome. In 64 AD, a massive fire broke out in Rome, burning for over a week. Though Nero was away on vacation, upon hearing the news, he hurried back to the city to assist the victims. He introduced new laws to rebuild the city, but rumors quickly spread that he had started the fire himself to clear space for his grand new palace, the Domus Aurea, or Golden House. Ancient historians, including Tacitus, mentioned how Nero allegedly played his lyre and sang while the city burned, drawing parallels to the fall of Troy. Though there was no concrete evidence that he started the fire, the destruction of much of the city for his personal project fueled widespread suspicion. Persecution of Christians. After the fire, Nero sought a scapegoat to divert blame. He accused the Christians of starting the fire, despite no evidence linking them to the event. Tacitus and other ancient sources describe how Nero tortured and executed Christians in brutal ways, crucifying them, using them as human torches, or feeding them to wild animals in the arena. These executions were meant not only to punish, but to entertain the public. Nero's love for the arts, especially music, became notorious. He often forced members of the Roman elite to watch his performances, which could last for hours. He even gathered over 5,000 people to cheer for him during his musical acts. The emperor's obsession with his own performances became so overwhelming that people would pretend to be dead just to escape his shows. Nero's reign left an indelible mark on Roman history, primarily for the cruelty and excess that defined his leadership. From his violent purges to his obsession with artistic glory, he remains one of the most infamous figures in the empire's history. His extravagance, costly projects, and erratic behavior alienated both the aristocracy and the military. After being rejected by the Roman people who could no longer tolerate his monstrous behavior and abandoned by his guards, his reign ended tragically when at just 30 years old, in 68 AD, Nero took his own life, famously declaring, "What an artist dies in me." But was Nero truly the monster history describes? Much of what we know comes from sources hostile to him, such as Tacitus and Suetonius, who had their own biases. Some modern historians argue he was a misunderstood ruler whose policies were overshadowed by scandal and exaggeration. Was Nero a villain, or was he a victim of history's harsh judgment? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. If you enjoyed the content of this video, click the subscribe button so you can receive more content like this every week. Thanks for watching.